Hello, welcome to the Minnesota Black and African Author Festival by herARTS in Action. My name is Taraya Johnson.
And my name is Kalia. The inspiration of the festival was to help students of Black and African heritage increase reading skills and comprehension through books with diverse representation.
But this is for everyone because we all benefit by learning more.
Tonight, our author is Vincent Reed, and they will be reading their book, A Glimpse of Being Broken, Part 1. Enjoy, and please stick around for an activity and author question and answer section.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys can all hear me all right. My name is Vincent Reed. I am going to be reading from A Glimpse of Being Broken, Part 1. I'm going to start on Chapter 7, page 125, A Step Forward in Life. Sometimes people come into your life when you need them the most. For me, it was when I moved into my new foster home. I moved into a foster home that summer right outside of a small town named Gray Eagle, Minnesota, with Jeff and Karina Rhodey. They had a large dairy farm, and if I remember right, they milked around 50 cows twice a day. Jeff was a full-time farmer and volunteer firefighter. Karina worked as a child support officer for the county and would come home daily to help on the farm. They had no children of their own, but I did have a little foster brother named Joseph. There were also border collies there. If I remember correctly, they bred them. The farm itself was rather large, and there was a lot of farm equipment everywhere. I got there right when they were in the process of milking that evening. Karina and Joseph helped me get my stuff into my new room. Their house was pretty good size, and there were 3 bedrooms on the main floor, plus a huge finished basement with a pool table. Joseph was a few years younger than I was, and his room was right across from mine. By the time I got all unpacked and ready to go outside, Jeff was already done milking for the night. We headed out to the barn, though to help do nightly chores and to meet Jeff. I really didn't know what to expect when we went out there, but I was surprised. Their barn was a lot larger than my grandparents and a lot newer with more cows. Jeff turned out to be the nicest man I had ever met, and as it turned out, was an athlete himself. That night, we sat outside on their steps, just talking and getting to know one another. They went over the rules of their house, and to be honest, they were pretty much common sense. They only really expected you to help around the farm and do your chores. Jeff said the next day he would take me on a tour of the farm and his fields. It was turning out to be a great day, and I was excited to see the whole farm. It's funny that Jeff left such a great impression on me that still to this day sticks with me. He was the closest thing to a father I had ever known. He also taught me a lot about fairness, honesty, and hard work. The next day, I got to go on the big tour of the farm with Jeff and Joseph after chores were finished. It was amazing just how big the farm really was and all the equipment they had there. I remember Jeff asking me if I had ever been in any of this type of equipment. To his surprise, I responded I had rode in one. I had driven and operated some of this stuff. By far, though, the one piece of equipment he had there that I was most interested in learning how to operate was the Bobcat. I had seen a few of those growing up, but never been in one. Jeff seemed eager for me to give it a try, and said later in the day I could try it out. Not only were there the cattle that you see up by the barn, but also calf pens behind the barn and heifers in the pasture. The heifers were just a bit too young to milk yet, so they were out in the pasture. The calves out back were being fed out of pails yet, and some bottle fed. There was, in addition to those calves, 2 pens in the barn for cows that were about to give birth. I want to say there was maybe 100 head of cattle in total. There was a lot to see and explore here at the farm. Jeff said that Joseph would take me around later for a better tour. I was extremely excited about living on this farm. I could just feel the anticipation still that I had about that farm. After the livestock tour, we went to all the sheds, and Jeff showed me where all the equipment gets stored. There was a huge pole shed at the back of the farm, behind the manure pit that housed all the tractors after they were used and cleaned. This by far was the coolest building I had ever been in. There was a large shed right when you turned into the driveway that housed a lot of the smaller yard equipment, four-wheelers, snowmobiles, and a large workshop for the farm equipment. I am pretty sure there was equipment there to fix anything on the farm. There were a lot of other buildings on the farm, but all those were used to house feed and hay in. It was hay season, so there was help coming that day to bale and stack hay at the farm. You know how some people you meet leave lasting impressions on you? Well, that is how his helpers rubbed me. Their names were the Johnsons, and they were all brothers. They were all athletes that were very, very well mannered. The oldest was Alan. He was a college student at Fergus Falls Community College. He had his brother Jim and Eric with him. Jim was the middle child, and Eric was the younger. Eric was maybe 3 or so years older than me. They all were tall and athletically built. They were just the nicest family you would ever hope to meet. Years later, I ran into Alan at a resort I was working at, and he was still the nicest person you could ever meet. That day, I rode on one of the hay wagons, stacking bales with Alan. He was a super nice guy that had no problem talking and socializing. We kind of talked about a little of everything that day. It didn't take long before I realized they were the local star athletes in town. I could tell they had been working for Jeff for a while because they knew their way around the farm. Alan pretty much grabbed every two bales, and I grabbed the third to stack. It worked out nicely that way. I was not quite as strong as he was. We only baled until around 3:30 that day because we had to get all the chores done in the barn before we milked that night. While Joseph and Jeff did the barn chores, the Johnson boys and I stacked the last few wagons of hay in the outbuilding. Around 5:30 or so, Karina got home from work, and Joseph had to go inside and do his household chores. The first couple of days went by pretty quickly, and before we knew it, the weekend was upon us. My new foster parents were a lot of fun. They were younger, so they liked to go out a lot and do stuff with those kids. That weekend on Saturday, we went to the movies in a town called Sauk Center, which was only maybe 30 minutes away. I can't remember the movie we went to that weekend. I just recall going to the movies. That Sunday, we went to Karina's parents, who had a place not far from the farm. Her mom and dad were extremely nice and friendly. I knew right away after meeting her family that I was going to really enjoy living at this new home. Over the next few weeks, I spent most of my time out working with Jeff. We finished up the hay season and doing odds and ends stuff around the farm. I even got my chance to drive the Bobcat to clean the manure pit behind the barn. During those couple of weeks, Jeff also taught me how to drive the smaller tractor he had that we used to run the baler and manure spreader. Time went by fast when there was something to do all the time. It's funny, it never really felt like work while I was there, more like helping. I was never forced to do anything I didn't want to while at this home. Yes, I worked hard here, but I was always treated well and was rewarded for everything I did while there. That means the world to me and has stuck in my head to this day. With school coming up, I wasn't sure what to expect as far as shopping and school clothes. I had only been at this new home for a short time, so wasn't expecting much. However, one Saturday, week before school was to start, Karina had me and Joseph get dressed after Saturday morning chores and breakfast. She told us we were going to St. Cloud to go shopping for school clothes. It was exciting to get to go school shopping. After all, it had been some years since I got new clothes. I understood most of my clothes no longer fit me, and my shoes were getting tight and falling apart. Jeff had given me a couple pair of his to get me by until I got some that would fit me. I was going to be going to a very small school that was only a couple of miles away. I was going to be in the 8th grade this year and was excited. It's a new start for me where nobody knows about my past. I was most of all comfortable living at this home because everybody loved Jeff and Karina in this town. It was going to be nice to start the year out as a new student versus coming in after school had already started. It was evident to me that I would be the only minority at this school, or in this town. From everyone that I had met so far, though, I didn't get a sense I was going to have any issues. Jeff was a pretty popular guy in town, as well as everyone knew I was his new foster kid. The first day of school, Karina took me to get me registered for my classes. I was expecting something a bit bigger when it came to the size of the school. The school was one of those old 2 or 3 story brick schools that you see all over the state and now that are closed. I'm not sure the exact population of Gray Eagle back then, but I'm sure it was right around 500. That first day was a nervous one for me, not really knowing what to expect from the other students. All my classes were on the second floor of the school, except for gym and my music class. The first floor of school was elementary and special classes. Second floor was all junior high and high school. I have so many fond memories of this school and this town. I never experienced any forms of racism or bullying while I was at this school. There obviously were students that just didn't socialize with me, but there was never any issue with bullying. I feel as though I came into myself in a lot of ways at this school. I made a lot of friends. To this day, I still socialize with on social media. The teachers at this school all as well treated me just like the rest of the kids. The school provided me with a lot of firsts in my life, such as my first kiss, my first date, my first dance, just to name a few. I guess though these are all normal things for a student my age. I had a lot of fun at this school and really enjoyed the small town atmosphere. The town and the people and the culture of this small town left its positive mark on me that I can never forget. That year I really grew in leaps and bounds when it came to my social and personal growth. Jeff and Karina were good people that encouraged participation in social and athletic programs. I ended up that first year playing football, basketball, and running track. I caught the eye of our track coach that year, who also was my history teacher, if I recall correctly. When we had our class track day, I lapped almost half my class in a mile. Ran the mile in under 6 minutes, which apparently was fast for someone my age. I enjoyed the other sports, but I really loved running. I really felt like I belonged in this community, and the people enjoyed me there. I was also enjoying my time at the farm as well, learning how to do all kinds of new things and operate equipment. I had always seen at larger farms. Jeff was an excellent teacher. He had lots of patience and understanding. I never had a lot of issues learning how to do something. Usually when Jeff showed me how to do something once, I could figure it out myself. I always tried to go above and beyond what Jeff asked me to do, so that he would be impressed. I learned though that they never wanted to be impressed. They just wanted me to do my best and supported me all along the way. Looking back, it was never about impressing them. It was about trying before saying you can't. I was extremely excited for Christmas that year, since my new foster parents were so nice, as well as their family. That first Christmas, we had a nice tree set up in the living room right next to the television. The night before Christmas, I went to church with Karina and her parents. I didn't mind this too much, since I had been to church previously. After church, we all went to her parents for eggnog and cookies, which was a family tradition of theirs. The next day, after we finished all our chores, we went back to their house to open presents. That Christmas, there were tons of presents under that tree, and it was hard for me to contain my excitement. The only thing that I could compare it to was years ago at Janice's house. Joseph and I got to help pass out the presents to everyone. Once they all were passed around, we opened them all as a family. I don't remember what my gifts were that year. I remember more of the family time and festivities. As I am older now, I am beginning to think that this is really what the holidays are about. To me, if I can remember the time spent over the gifts, that means that someone took the time to make it truly special. The only gift I can really remember from that first Christmas was of this sweater that I received. It had a big Christmas tree embroidered on the front of it. Looking back, it was more humorous that I wore it. Then again, I think it was the norm back then to wear these things. The other thing I remember that I loved about that Christmas was the roasted chestnuts wrapped in bacon. For years, the taste and smell of those things still hang with me and cross my mind every Christmas. All in all, obviously that holiday season was one to remember, one that gave me hope again, that life was going to get better. It's weird now to acknowledge that back then, and still to this day, it made me feel weird to get presents for any reason. Growing up, I was never really given presents for Christmas, other than a few homes I had been in. Most of the toys I had received in my childhood came from charities, so whenever someone gave me, I lost my track there. Growing up, I was never really given presents for Christmas other than a few homes I had been in. Most of my toys I had received in my childhood came from charities, so whenever someone gave or gives me a gift, I don't know how to really feel about it. Most of the time, though, I have come not to expect anything. That way, I won't be disappointed when I get nothing. After all, for years with my family, I had been treated horribly by them. When it was holidays and birthdays, I guess there was a bit of confusion in my head that first Christmas about the presents. I was happier about the time I got to spend with them as family, being treated as though I belonged there. That is the meaning to me of true happiness around the holiday season. Hope you enjoyed.
Even though you're at home, give a clap to Vincent Reed for the work they put into A Glimpse of Being Broken, Part 1.
Now we will do an activity inspired by the book. Art and writing projects are a great follow-up to reading to help increase comprehension and retention.
Write a letter or note to someone who loves you. Write about something you overcame with the help of a loved one or someone that showed they cared. What's something you can do to help someone? Create an action list.
Show us what you made.
Picture or video of your work and tag us across all social media platforms at herARTS in Action.
After reading the book, I bet you have some questions. Let's see what author Vincent Reed has to say when they chat with herARTS in Action founder Sarah Drake.
You can also post questions for the
So today we're talking with Vincent E. Reed, the author of A Glimpse at Being Broken, Part 1. Thanks, Vincent, for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, your career, hobbies, just kind of give us a little glimpse into who you are.
I am a former foster child. I grew up in the foster care system in Washington State and in Minnesota State. My mother's family's from here, which is how I ended up back here. I actually went to school with Sarah here.
Yes.
On Prairie Gray Eagle. For me,
we won't say how long ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. I got gray hairs. For me, foster care has been it's a big part of who I am today. It took me a while to come to terms with being in foster care and accept that I am a former foster, but I'm proud of who I am today because of the experiences I've gone through, and it helped me write these books.
Oh, so you said these books, and that was my next question of how many have you written, and are they all about foster care, or are there different subjects?
They're both memoirs. I wrote the first memoir. I was in a motor vehicle accident in 2014, and I had a spinal cord injury, so I ended up having surgery. And during my downtime, I was going through depressed stage, and I decided to get out of that. I would write a book. So I just started writing. I lost my brother in 2016, which is actually when I started writing the book, because it was something we always said we were going to do. Growing up in foster care, we're going to write a book about our where we're from and what we've been through. So I just started writing one day, and before I knew it, I had the first book, which covered from as far back as I could remember, which I think was 5 years old, all the way up till I got emancipated from the state, or I aged out, which many foster kids, they just age out, and when they age out, there's nothing there, especially if you're a ward of the state. So I wrote the book, and then I finished the one book, and then I kind of was like, I have so much more to share. I worked in Alaska on fishing boats. I owned companies out in Seattle installing office furniture. So I decided, hey, I'm going to write this other book from the time I left foster care until where we're at today. So I just sat down and wrote. It took me about 7 months to write both books. But it was a release for me, like just letting it all out there and just being free of it. It was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders.
I knew you were writing a second book. Is that edited and published and available, or is it still in that process?
That is published and available. It is also on Amazon.
Okay. And both were self-published?
Both were self-published.
Okay. And did you have any funding help with that, or did you do this completely by yourself?
I did it completely by myself. Now, I'm probably going to be writing a third book, but the third book is actually going to be, I actually have somebody that's actually buying the rights to these books, and they're gonna redo them, and then I'm gonna actually publish a third book from where I started college, because the second book left off where I was thinking about going to college. So obviously I went to college. I got my AA in 1 year. I'm a high school dropout, so I took 20 credits a semester, and I started last spring, graduated this spring.
Congratulations.
Got accepted in the University of Minnesota. So it was a lot of hard work, but I wouldn't change it for the world. So I know I have a unique story, and I want to share that story with as many as possible, because I believe that it doesn't matter where you come from, that determines who you end up being.
I knew you, and as far as I know, you were one of two people that I knew in foster care growing up. And then I didn't really hear much about it. And this wasn't a question I prepared for you, so forgive me. But when you talked about people buying the rights to your books, the show The Fosters, when that came out, it really, and I don't know, maybe it's good or bad, but it helped open my eyes more, because as a kid, I didn't know anything. And when I met you, the family you were staying with, as far as I knew, they were great people.
They
And
were amazing.
so, yeah, and so, I, again, as a child, rural Minnesota, never had any thoughts of what the bad things are around foster care. So, shows like that, or people buying the rights and doing their own things with them, like, do you think that helps, or, you
I,
know,
the only part I get concerned about is them buying the rights and changing the story, because once they own the rights, they can decide what to include and what to exclude. But I am working with I'm trying to keep everything in Minnesota as well. So I'm working with actually a publisher out of Minneapolis that I know pretty well, and I'm pretty confident that for the most part, I would say probably 95% of what's in that book is going to stay in that book. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And the third book will actually have a ghostwriter sit down with me, and we'll actually write the book and edit it. And this is probably going to be a 2-3 year ordeal, but I think it's worth it.
so what are the benefits, or what do you hope to come from them redoing the books and or having a ghostwriter? What will make it different or better?
I would hope that it's smoother. Um, because at the time when I wrote the books, the highest education I had was I dropped out of high school my senior year, so that was the extent of my education. So obviously Word has formatting and spell check and all that, but it doesn't provide you with that professionalism that an editor would catch, as far as like run-on sentences, flow of the story. So things like that, that's what I really want to help get. This, my books are pretty straightforward, and there's not a lot of imagination there. It's pretty much, this is what, it's a chronological experience, and that's literally what the books are. And I didn't think I'd be able to get as much out of my life as I did, and here it ended up being 2 books. So I mean, there's a lot there.
So that kind of helped answer part of my next question of what helped and hindered you the most during writing. So this, the missing education piece kind of hindered. What was something that was helpful, or someone that was helpful during this process?
For me, it was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I knew once I finished those books that I could let go, that I didn't have to be angry. I didn't have to hide who I was, because once it's out there, and you can't take it back. So having the truth out there and who I really am, it allowed me to grow as a person. It allowed me to accept who I am, and not only accept who I am, but really acknowledge and really just thrive from who I am and my experiences, because understanding that it's a unique experience, not everybody goes through it. And one of the inspirational things that really hit me when I was writing the second book was, so I started getting involved with some of the Facebook groups with foster care, because it kind of lit a fuse underneath me. And I was on a Zoom one day, and it was a professor from Santa Clara, San Diego State, and he had foster kids, and that was his goal. He couldn't have kids of his own, so he started with foster kids, and his goal was to make sure every foster kid that ever came out of his home, got a college degree. And he shared with me that less than 7% of foster kids ever graduate from high school, and then less than 3% ever graduate from college. And I was like, are you kidding me? And he shared
Wow.
that statistic with me, and I was like, wow. So that really lit a fire under me to go to college, like to do this. Like, I want to show people that just because we're fosters doesn't mean that we're worthless or we're not as valuable as the next person, because we're just as valuable, and our experiences make us even more valuable. Because, sharing that is, it's an amazing thing.
Mm, That's awesome. So you mentioned this freeing, the letting go of anger. This is your story. It's your life. There's um, some good points. There's some horrible things. You know, what what kind of impact does that have on you? So you were a foster child, you've written these books, you're in college, like you graduated community college, you're in a University of Minnesota now, you're, just moved in so you can start your first semester there. Like this whole process, like how do you feel in this moment? And like how do you process this all?
You know, like sometimes it makes you, like what you said just gives me goosebumps, because it makes you take a step back and look from the outside in, and it's like, wow, what you've just accomplished is pretty amazing. But
Mhm.
also it makes you think how much life, how much you could have done when you were younger. I'm 43 now, and if I could have done all this when I was in my 20s, I could just imagine how much I could have changed, not only my life, but the life of so many others. Because at the end of the day, for me, helping others is something I'm very passionate about. Even going to college now, with going after, uh, I'm going to go for my doctorate, but I don't plan on working as a psychologist. I'm going to end up at a nonprofit helping people. The reason I chose to go to college was because it encourages our youth, especially our youth of color and our inner city kids. Hey, I came from this. You can do it too. Um, so that's what I really hope to see. If I, the more people I can help, uh, the more I can encourage. That's at the end of the day. That's what it's all about.
Is there a specific person or place or something that happened while you were in foster care that really helped develop who you are now?
The foster home I was at when I met you, um, they were absolutely amazing. Um, they really showed me that how much foster parents can love a child that's not their own, because there are very loving homes out there. But then there's homes out there too that aren't so loving. But when you get in a home that is very loving, you are going to know it. You're going to grow as a person. You're going to grow as an individual, and it's transformative. It really changes who you are.
For the kids watching this, or the adults like me that work with youth, is there any kind of advice you have for any of us that we may or may not know that somebody's in foster care, but just some things in general that you can advise us of, either to look out for or to say these are just nice things, even if somebody's not in foster care, but anything like that that you'd offer?
One of the things for me, growing up in foster care, is it's embarrassing. It's to know that it's embarrassing. You don't really want to share it with your friends, but that's okay. You don't necessarily have to share it you don't have to share it with your friends. You don't have to share it with grown-ups. Um, but I would really want you to know, as a foster, that it doesn't change who you are. You're still valuable. You still have you have a future ahead of you. There's so many opportunities that are there for you. Um, and we're really working, as far as on the legislative side, we're really working towards making sure that those opportunities are going to be there for you. Now with fosters, you can stay in foster homes till you're 21. That just passed this year. University of Minnesota, if your household income is below 50,000, you get the University of Minnesota free, or University of Minnesota Gopher Plus commitment, which is free tuition. That's why I chose the University of Minnesota, because I worked with the regents there and I knew it was coming. And once they announced it, why wouldn't I want to go there? They are going to change so many people's lives. So many, so many marginalized students are going to get the opportunity to get an education and change their lives. So I mean, that's inspirational to me. And where else would I want to be besides a school that's doing that? Because they're not only doing it for students of color, it's income based. So if you're low income in your family, um, you get a free education. And I mean, if you want it, it's there for you.
When it comes to the book, but then you wrote a second and you're going to do a third. So maybe you kind of are going to answer this already because you'd have multiple books. But, was there something that you've had to leave out that you wish you could have included or you couldn't get to and is going to be in a future book, or something that you're still hoping to help get out there?
So I was fortunate enough that when I was in foster care in Washington State, they actually hired a writer to come to the home weekly and work on these books. So I literally had a blueprint of every foster home I was in from the time I was 5 years old until I left Washington State. By the time I left Washington State, I was 11 or 12. So it was pretty easy for me to go back and track every foster home. So I was very fortunate to have that I guess it's a piece of me that would have been lost had that book not been there. And it was amazing that the lady who actually wrote the book kept them for 18 years and then mailed it to me on my 18th birthday. So it was just amazing to get that piece of me that I felt like I had lost, and it made me complete. So I was really fortunate that fell in my lap.
It's cool to hear that they did that for you. With this other series, our focus is specifically Black and African students to increase their interest in reading and improve their comprehension through representation, both in seeing the authors, but then also seeing the content and illustrations in the books. And so I have a couple questions geared more towards your younger self. And, what advice could you give a new reader or somebody who doesn't like to read? And so for one, were you a reader when you were younger?
I actually was.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of a speed reader. I could read one book a day. I can pick it so you got to find what you're passionate about. Find what you really enjoy. If you have a hobby that you really love, or if you have a character you really love, a storyline, pick something that you really enjoy reading and read away. For me, when I was younger, it was Stephen King. I think I've read every Stephen King book, every Dean Koontz book. I loved kind of that thriller type horror books. But since being in college, I've widened my horizons. Now I find myself more into like history, and I really like to know where I come from. So I've read, I'm reading more books. Like I just read 500 Souls. I also read The Color of Law just last week. So I like reading books that, so I understand where I come from. And I think that's an important piece to every culture, is to know where you come from, your culture, your past. But if that doesn't interest you at a younger age, there's so many books out there, so many different genres that you can choose from. And, I love to read, and I encourage everybody to read. Knowledge is power.
It is definitely. And that really great segue into my next question. Was there an early experience where you learned that language or reading was powerful? You just said knowledge is power. So like the power of either specific words and their meaning, or even just, having that knowledge from reading. Is there any sort of experience that that came in handy for you?
I think, obviously growing up, and I shouldn't say growing up, but I like to say my coming of age years, which, I consider my adolescence, middle school, high school. Uh, so, living in central Minnesota, I had to deal with some racism. And at the time, you don't realize what those words mean. But as you get older, you definitely realize what those words and what they're intended to mean, and they're intended to be hurtful. And I like to look back on those and use them as fuel for me to understand how they may have gotten there to that point, and how it affected me, and how I can grow and develop from that experience. Um, so that was the negative side, but there was also a positive side. Growing up and with my imagination, I love to read. Uh, and Stephen King was my absolute favorite in ninth, 10th grade. Uh, and it inspired me to broaden my horizons as far as reading, because I went from Stephen King to Dean Koontz, uh, to more. I actually like to read poetry too, but I find myself now stuck in history books. But it all helps develop who you become. Um, so I guess that's the best answer I can give you to that question. It's such a That's the best answer I can give you for that question.
That's a good answer. Um, and how about to go back a little bit? This question wasn't prepared for you, but just in hearing you talk, you had your accident that caused you pain, you lost your brother, now looking back, like that process of, those painful experiences, and writing, like how has that impacted you, and how will you take that and use that to like propel you forward? Because it's obvious there's nothing stopping you, like you're gonna do things. So like how has this whole thing been, and where is it gonna take you now?
So in 2015, well, early 2016, right before my brother died, my brother passed away 3 months after this happened. My father died in July of 2016. I had never met my father's side of the family. I had always grown up being told one thing, um, and I believed it, because I had no reason not to. Um, and I got invited to my dad's funeral by my aunts and uncles, and I got out there and I found out that my family is very educated, and they're quite the opposite of what I was told growing up. And knowing that my family was educated, it it excelled my sense of who I am and what my worth is, because there's 16 grandchildren and I have 6 brothers. Well, there's 5 of us, um, so me plus 5, and I'm a twin. So out of all those grandchildren, we're the only 6 without college degrees. Um,
Mhm.
so that really impacted me, like, oh my Lord, my family is very well educated, and I can do better than what I'm doing. And I've always known I was intelligent, but it's you need to, you got to figure out what you're passionate about, and that will excel everything in your life. Once I found out that, once I figured out that what I wanted to do, which is really help people, I had to figure out a way to get there. So once you can figure out what you're really passionate about, then you can figure out a roadmap to what you need to do to get to where you want to be. And along that road, you're going to meet so many people that want to help you and encourage you. But education is part of that, because nobody takes you as seriously if you're not educated. Having that degree and that education gives you the foundation, and gives you the knowledge to speak on a subject. So you take your life experiences, you mix that with a college degree, right there you're a professional on what you're speaking about, because you have the knowledge and you have the experience. Um, so to me, that was the biggest driving point, was when I met my dad's family, and I was like, whoa. I'm talking federal contractors. I have aunts that work at the Pentagon. So I mean, very educated people. And then I'm just like, wow, I can do so much better. And then, the point of pride for my siblings, um, you know, and in pride for myself. It's something that, I'm very proud of where I am today. I know my siblings are proud that I did this. Um, and I know they'll be even more proud when I graduate and I become a doctor, even my master's. And I'm going to use all this to, like I said earlier, I'm going to have a nonprofit. I'm going to use all this to help more people. Um, so I mean, it's giving forward is the way I like to look at it.
Awesome. And you already told us that there's a book 3 in the works that
Will be.
kind of, this series, this trilogy, if you will. And you're just starting the U of M. So what's next after that book? Do you have other writing aspirations?
Well, I'm actually in the process right now also of working on a research project. It's a fairly large research project. It's probably going to take a couple of years, but it deals with equity, diversity, and inclusion in the state of Minnesota and systemic racism. So it's a very large undertaking. There's a few of us working on this project. So that'll be something I'm going to publish. And that's kind of the route I want to go. Is I want to bring light where light needs to be brought. I want to enter these communities and desegregate and incorporate multiple cultures and expose people to cultures that they wouldn't otherwise get to experience, and show people that just because somebody's different does not mean that they don't have something positive that you might enjoy. Because a lot of it, at the end of the day, a lot of things are it's just disinformation, and it's just a misunderstanding of the culture, because every culture is beautiful. You just got to find what is, you just got to look. But if you don't get exposed to that culture, you're going to live your whole life assuming that that culture is something that it's not. So, I love food. That was my way of getting introduced to so many different cultures. I had a choice this year of a language. My stepdad was Hispanic, but I didn't want to. Yes, Hispanics are a marginalized group, but I chose Somalian. I want to learn Somalian because I love the culture. I love the food, and it'd be amazing. It's an amazing, beautiful culture. So that's the language I chose. So for the next 4 semesters, I'll be enjoying Somalian.
Nice. So Mahadsanid, which means thank you for doing this interview. Any final thoughts or things that you want to share with our viewers before we end today?
Enjoy what people share as far as writers, because it takes a lot to sit down and write a book, and every story is different. And I would strongly encourage all of you readers to put down your phones, put down your video games, pick up a book. You're not going to learn anything from the video game. You're going to learn something from a book, and that knowledge accumulates. It stacks up, and I mean, the sky's the limit. If you really have a passion for reading, you're going to have a passion for education, and you're definitely going to go far in this world. And if you're a former foster, or if you're a foster right now, know that there are resources, there are people out there who love you and want to help you. And the same thing, sky's the limit. All you got to do is reach out and ask.
And not to put you on the spot, but are there any specific resources that that you could share right now, or that you could share with me that I can attach at the end of the video?
I can send you some links, but the 2 big ones I just shared is, our state just passed the new regulations for fosters that if you go to college, you get to stay in the foster home till you're 21. So if you go into college, say you're 18 and you're graduating from high school, you apply at the University of Minnesota. This is the catcher though. You can't be a transfer student to take full benefit of that University of Minnesota Plus scholarship. You have to be coming into the system as a freshman. So if you get that University of Minnesota Plus scholarship, which is full tuition, and you go to the University of Minnesota and you stay in the metro, you get to stay at your foster home and go to school for free. you're gonna be debt free when you graduate. That would be an amazing feeling. Like,
That's
uh,
life changing.
sure, you know, because you've gone to college. We all know how much college costs. You take out loans. Apartments are not cheap. So if you can combine the U plus and you get to stay in the foster home till you're 21, you know, you are set. This is life changing for you. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it and the hard
Yeah.
work that's gone into getting this put together. So I mean, don't give up. You get that high school diploma, get that degree, go out and change the world.
Awesome. And you are doing just that. I'm so excited to see, from high school till now, what you're doing and what you've overcome to get to this point, and how it's not about you though. You're taking all of it to help better lives of other people. So thank you for all of that work that you're doing. And thank you for taking the time to share with everybody today. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
And thank you, Sarah. It was a pleasure, as always.
Thank you to author Vincent Reed for answering our questions about their writing and book A Glimpse of Being Broken Part 1.
We hope you are as excited as we are. This is an activity made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Central Minnesota Arts Board. Thanks to the legislative appropriation from the Arts and Culture Heritage Fund. Thank you.
The Minnesota Black and African Author Festival is also possible because of herARTS in Action and the generous sponsors. Thank you to the African American Employees Research Group at CentraCare, Higher Works Collaborative with the Bush Foundation, Apiary Co-working, Voices Black Business Resource Group at Capital One, and Branding Up International. Help the authors make sure their books are in as many libraries as possible. If you don't see their books in your local library, please request it. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to keep reading.